arguably the greatest work of nonfiction of the 20th century.
That's too much, man!
In the Ice Age, how much taxes did people pay?
Follow the ridgeway.
Right now.
Do you know what we're here for?
Your name, please?
Now, I don't want reality.
Oh, never could.
Interest.
Just crazy enough to work.
Yeah.
It looks good. And it looks hard.
That's hot.
So bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
It's science.
I see that you know your judo.
So hot right now.
Oh, is it panic time at MSNBC? Yeah.
day for being sad. That's hot.
Well, I feel like I'm having deja vu. Didn't I just see you all moments ago? Well, it's probably just me. Well, we've still got a lot to look at here today, even though we already did 2 hours of a stream. We're like a train wreck, if you ask me. Well, buckle up those seatbelts, space fans. Got a little road trip to take to the Valley of the Unknown. You're freaked out how bad Biden was at MSNBC? Well, I'm not shocked to hear that report. But thanks for cluing us in on that. Good to see you all back here so shortly after another stream. Oh no, Robot Cat, Selena Marie. Fresh out the asylum. Mrs. Jen, Aaron W, Mini Doctors, Afrobonics. Oh, and Geodragon. Almost missed you. Good to see all you folks here. Well, I guess we'll start in a usual place, but slightly different. The United States. That's right. Today, we are going to skip gun violence and go straight to health-related issues. Our first story here is from CNN. Oh god, haven't we had enough of them today? It's okay. We'll get through this chat. Alright, CNN it is. Where, according to them, the Supreme Court has formally dismissed this major abortion appeal. Oops, it's not on full screen. And it's muted. Not on full screen and muted. Come on, StreamLord, get it together, pal.
All right, breaking news. We did just receive the Supreme Court ruling on the Idaho abortion case. I want to go straight out to my colleagues Pamela Brown and Ellie Honig. They are live outside the Supreme Court. We're waiting for this to come down. Do we have any new details, Pamela, on what's happening?
Well, we are just learning.
We're still talking about the debate. I'm not shocked, and in fact, I feel like I still want to talk about it because it was such a train wreck. You don't know why anyone is panicking. If they have eyes, they should have known that he's been this bad. You're not wrong about that, but can we actually accuse the media, people such as CNN or MSNBC, of having eyes for the last 2 years? If anything, if they do have possession of eyes, those eyes have been attached to their heads, which have been securely covered in sand for at least 2 years. Yeah, I'm not surprised that they were surprised because of the fact that they've just been ignoring critics of Biden and of his plan to run for a second time, just ad nauseum. Anyway, back to this.
This opinion was officially released from the High Court, and it is in line with what was released inadvertently on the court's website yesterday. So I'm going to bring in my colleagues, Ellie Honig, Paula Reed, to break it down. Paula?
So we've been listening in with the court to find out what cases we're going to get today. They had 10 outstanding. We got 4, and 2 of the bigger ones. The first one you were discussing earlier, Purdue Pharma, but then also this abortion case out of Idaho. But a little bit of a spoiler, of course, we got this. Yeah.
Support character. Yes. And actually, well, I can't remember. Did I say I was going to give you support characters from the last stream? I can't recall. 14. Who is 14? I do not know. Mork from Orc. I did say I was going to do that. There is Mork from Orc.
Yesterday, it was inadvertently leaked on the court's website. But yesterday in a statement, while the Supreme Court confirmed it had inadvertently briefly appeared on the website, it did not confirm that it was actually the opinion. And instead, the statement said that the actual formal opinion would be released in due course. Well, it looks like in due course is today. So as we reported yesterday, in this opinion, the court sides basically with the Biden administration for now, but this is specific to the state of Idaho. They're saying, look, in the state of Idaho right now, if doctors need to perform abortions to stabilize a woman in an emergency room setting, they can continue to do that, even though the state law would require doctors to wait until a woman's life is in danger. But the reason this doesn't really resolve the issue is because this only applies to Idaho. And in her concurrence, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she said, look, this isn't a victory because you're not answering the question of what doctors are required to do by law now that you've sort of overturned Roe v. Wade and tossed this issue down to the states. So technically it's a win for the Biden administration in this highly watched abortion case, but it still leaves a lot of questions unanswered.
Yeah, right, because you had the...
Yeah, this is super frustrating. Only affecting Idaho, and it's just a continuation of their professed stance on pushing off the issue of abortion to the states, and it is just wildly irresponsible, as we know just how most states are going to behave in this environment to some degree. And yeah, I don't think anybody should be counting that as a big win. Okay, you don't remember? Well, since you don't remember, I've given you one free character, which is Buddy Jesus on a raptor. Okay, yeah. Since it's not that consequential, we're just going to move on from it, but it did seem at least relevant enough to talk about. Let's go to this one. Another Supreme Court case. In this one, the Supreme Court has rejected a nationwide settlement, which was agreed upon between, I believe it was Purdue Pharma and I I think it was just the plaintiffs themselves. I could be wrong on that. But the Supreme Court has rejected the deal which they made. I think it might have also involved some sort of legal body as well. I just cannot remember who it was. God, that's breaking me. I need to look it up. Either way, let's go on to this. I'll try and figure it out while we do that.
The Supreme Court rejected a nationwide settlement with Purdue Pharma, the maker of the opioid OxyContin. The case would have provided billions of dollars in treatment for opioid addiction and would have required the Sackler family, members of the Sackler family who own the company, to pay $6 billion. But the settlement would have freed the Sacklers from any other lawsuits regarding OxyContin. The decision came in a settlement that had been painstakingly negotiated by state and local officials and victims of the opioid epidemic. And it would have helped resolve a bankruptcy that had been declared by Purdue Pharma. In a 5-4 decision, Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote that federal law does not permit people who are not themselves declaring bankruptcy from getting a shield from civil lawsuits. And in this case, the members of the Sackler family had not themselves declared bankruptcy. The agreement that had been hammered out was pretty much in its final stages. It was really just awaiting the Supreme Court's up or down vote. Now that the court has rejected the agreement, it's pretty much back to the drawing board, and it's unclear what will happen next, although lawyers involved in the case say they expect negotiations to resume.
So I'm honestly, from what I understand about this, I think I'm on board with this ruling for some reason. I mean, not just some reason. I mean, I do think that taking away the ability for other people to sue the Sacklers and Purdue Pharma in the future, as well as giving them immunity from potential criminal prosecution, is idiotic. So I'm glad. I think I'm glad it struck down. I can't. I mean, the fact is a pretty complicated situation, because you do in fact, like, I do in fact want the families to be properly compensated in this matter, but also I just, you know, I just have concerns about that. It does sound like they're kind of getting away with murder, and literally.
Court on Thursday blocked a bankruptcy settlement reached with Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, that would have shielded its owners from lawsuits over their role in the nation's deadly opioid pandemic. The Sackler family, who own Purdue, had agreed to pay up to $6 billion to settle thousands of lawsuits accusing the company of misleading doctors and patients about the potential harms of its powerful pain medication. Part of that settlement gave the Sackler family legal immunity. During oral arguments in December, an attorney for Purdue argued that the settlement was the best and fastest way to get relief to those harmed.
The bankruptcy court here made careful findings that without this contribution not only was substantial and...
Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's be real. Those people definitely are responsible for this, considering the way they chose to market this drug. I think a lot of people are aware of what they did, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but yeah, they were incredibly negligent in the way that they pushed this drug onto doctors and onto patients vicariously through them. Okay, let's talk about one other health-related situation. This is from CBS News from 10 hours ago. According to them, dengue fever has been detected across new regions. The CDC is warning that is on the rise around the world. Now, if you're unaware, dengue fever can be fatal. Most people just get flu-like symptoms, but there are cases in which people die.
New recommendations this morning for the RSV vaccine. The CDC says all Americans aged 75 and older should get one dose. Individuals aged 60 to 74 years old only need to receive the RSV shot if they have certain health conditions like chronic heart or lung disease or advanced kidney disease. And a new warning from the CDC, there's been a surge of dengue fever around the world, and that's increasing the risk of it spreading here in the U.S. Global cases of the mosquito-borne disease hit record numbers this year. Countries in the Americas are reporting twice as many cases than in all of 2023. And now health officials in Florida are urging the public to take extra precautions like wearing bug spray and dumping out standing water. So joining me now is the editor-at-large for public health at KFF and CBS News medical contributor, Dr. Celine Gounder. Always great seeing you, Doctor. So what do we know about how dengue fever is spreading, and what are some of the potential risks associated with this virus?
Dengue fever spreads by mosquito bites, and part of what we're seeing now is with climate change, with increasing areas that are hot, humid, which are friendly to mosquitoes, where mosquitoes breed, we're seeing more transmission of dengue. And so we've seen a huge outbreak in Latin America.
The United States has been hot and humid, like, practically everywhere.
Over the last several months. There are parts of the United States that are also at risk, in particular the Gulf Coast, Florida, Texas, also parts of Southern California. What protects us here in the United States against dengue is people generally live in better homes, better housing, where you have screened windows, you have air conditioning, and so you have less exposure to mosquitoes in your home. But this is not a benign illness. People can develop very high fevers, headaches, vomiting, shock, where your blood pressure drops dramatically. And without treatment, about 15% of people who get dengue can die.
15%? I didn't know it was that high. For fuck's sake. Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Not gonna lie. Oh, God. Alright. It's weird doing 2 streams in a row. It's throwing me off right now. Okay. Focus, StreamLord, focus. Let's go to this one. Oh my God. This is wild. This is from 11 hours ago from CNN again. According to them, Trump has claimed that he was quote-unquote tortured in jail in a recent fundraising email.
Illegal.
And with just hours to go until the debate, former President Donald Trump in a surprise call to the Black American Business Leaders Roundtable in Georgia, saying his conviction and this mugshot are helping his appeal to Black voters. Here's what he said.
The mugshot is the best. Since it happened, the support among the Black community and the Hispanic community has skyrocketed. It's been amazing.
And joining me right now from Georgia, the Atlanta mayor, Andre Dickens, and it's nice to see you in person and to be here in your balmy city.
It's warm today, right?
I mean,
Hold on,
everywhere
I forgot.
It's been, we got kind of accustomed
forgot
to it in New
they're
York
gonna
in recent days. Okay,
just
what Trump
talk
just
about a
said right
bunch of
there
other
about the
stuff.
mugshot is the best thing since it happened, the support among the...
Hold on. You're not listening to 6 more minutes of CNN talk. I forgot where they... I hate them. I give up. I give up on CNN. We had too much from them earlier today. I'm moving on from this discussion. I wanted the one thing, but they didn't make a graphic for when they talk about it, and there's no way we're listening through 6 minutes of this. Okay. Let's go to this. If you're not aware, which I would be I struggle to think you aren't aware of this, which is why we're just going to quickly talk about it. Jamal Bowman lost his race against George Latimer in the primary in New York 16, I think it is. And according to the Associated Press, he is the first member of the squad to ever lose re-election bid, which is true. I didn't think about it, but yeah.
U.S. Representative Jamal Bowman has been defeated in a Democratic primary that's highlighted some of the divisions within his own party when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war. On Tuesday night, Westchester County Executive George Latimer defeated Bowman in a Democratic primary for the seat that covers some of the suburbs north of New York City. Bowman has been an outspoken critic of Israel in the U.S. House and has accused that country's leaders of genocide for attacks on citizens in Gaza.
Okay, so has the ICJ. And I love how they didn't point out that George Latimer received $15 million from AIPAC. Associated Press being as shitty as usual, I would say.
They do not want us to speak up for the most vulnerable here. They definitely don't want us to speak up for the children and babies and innocent people of Gaza. That's right. They don't want us to speak up about that.
Nope.
One of the most progressive Democrats in the House, Bowman's defeat could signal some difficulties for others in his party when it comes to messaging around the war. Latimer has been Westchester County Executive since 2018 and is also a former state lawmaker.
And a dude with terrible policy plans. He is like the definition of a neolib. He's practically center right. Okay. Let's move on here. That explanation was about as frustrating as the actual election itself. Okay, now let's look at this next story. We've been talking about this for months. It has been definitely developing quite a bit here recently. This is from CBS News from 8 hours ago, where Boeing gave a media tour of its manufacturing plant amid the current turmoil which the company is kind of going through right now. I would remind you that a couple of days ago we did a story about how Boeing, actually I think it was maybe like 3-4 days ago now. Either way, it was like Monday, I think, where we talked about how the Department of Justice actually filed charges against Boeing. So they're trying to repair their image right now.
And on this Thursday morning, we're getting a rare look inside one of Boeing's manufacturing facilities as the company faces
CBS
multiple
I love how they're doing
about
this.
safety. Boeing is also sharing new
I love how they started off like it's like an infomercial for Boeing. You're getting a all-access peek into Boeing's process.
details about the door panel that blew out mid-flight on a Boeing 737 MAX back in January. Our Chris Van Cleve was invited for a tour as the company tries to turn the page.
Just pointing at insulation.
This morning, special access to Boeing's 737 MAX production line. A carefully orchestrated and tightly controlled media tour aimed at showing changes the company says are being made in real time after that door panel blew out in January.
How confident are you in the quality of the aircraft coming off the line here today?
We have work to do, and we are rolling up our sleeves and ready to.
Who is rolling up
But
their
I am
sleeves?
very confident.
She's not wearing sleeves that roll up so good right now to be saying that in this moment. I don't think she's ever rolling up her sleeves on the job, to be perfectly frank. She doesn't seem like that sort of person. My guess is she just tells people what to do.
That Alaska Airlines 737 MAX rolled off this line last fall, leaving the factory without the bolts holding that door panel properly installed. A paperwork error, at least partially to blame.
A paperwork
But
error?
this is our moment.
Wow, CBS is really going in for Boeing right now. A paperwork error? The whistleblower, I think the one who was murdered, said that the reason that happened was because Boeing is asking them not to specify the problems, and by they I mean the safety, the safety analysts that are supposed to make sure the plane put together properly.
Boeing Senior VP Elizabeth Lund.
Here was Boeing. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going, to facing potential criminal prosecution. How did we get here, and what do you say to the flying public to believe you that the planes are safe?
The MAX crash. We made a mistake and we own. I believe it's the actions we have taken
The
for
MAX
many,
crash?
many years
Which one?
that have allowed air transportation to be the safest means of transportation out there.
Boeing says it's making changes to workforce training to better prepare new hires while raising the skill level of workers hired since the pandemic. The company says it is simplifying design plans and processes to make them
that's
easier
the problem?
to follow.
It wasn't simple.
Boeing
Oh, they're blaming the workers. It wasn't simple enough for these dumb fucking workers. Of course. Of course, I didn't think about that. Of course, it's the workers' fault. It's not the system that you've all put together to avoid paying money for safety inspections and or, in some cases, many cases, as it turns out, from what we've heard, is that they've been trying to use broken parts and, skip all of the processes that keep these planes safe, just for a little bit of extra money.
Inspecting components like fuselages before they are delivered in an effort to reduce product defects entering its factories, and has slowed production to shore up quality.
One of the big changes Boeing talked about during this media tour, the 730s.
Do you get Buddy Jesus on a Raptor Every Live? No, you just have gotten them. And I couldn't remember if I had told you all that I would carry over previous characters from last stream or not. Nobody else could tell me with any certainty. And so I just gave you one of the characters that you had earned from earlier today when we were watching the debate for free. And I figured, why not Buddy Jesus on a Raptor? I'm very proud of that emote. It took a fair amount of effort to get done. We should get it. We should get Buddy Jesus on a Raptor on every stream until the end of June. What, because of Pride Month? I can see the logic behind that.
MAX production line was the ability for employees to stop the work, stop the line if they see a problem. In fact, on build day 5, there's a plane-sized gap in the line because the line was stopped to fix.
Wow, this fucking guy. They are working their fucking asses off to try and make Boeing look good right now. Let's not remember all of the very real criticisms that have been levied by the whistleblowers at the company who went to Congress to testify under oath about the absolutely wildly negligent safety policies at Boeing that have led us to where we're at. Seems like a very strange decision here but of course CBS, they know where the bread is buttered. You should always have, just no matter what, every day, ever. It's a lot. Alright, gotta keep moving. Sorry, taking too long. Okay, let's look at this. This is sorry, from not very long ago, about 4 hours ago. A freight train derailed outside of Chicago, forcing evacuations in the surrounding area.
All right, kicking things off with this breaking news story. Police are reporting that a freight train, you see it next to me, derailed in Madison, Illinois this morning. Evacuations at this moment are underway as crews check each of these freight cars for any potential chemical leaks. At this moment, which is still early in this incident, no injuries have been reported. Now, Madison's just a bit over an hour south of Chicago if you're driving, and officials are urging residents who live within 1 mile south and west of the derailment site to evacuate. In fact, a post on the town's Facebook page says people should plan for a, quote, long-term evacuation. And we should also note that there is a regional rail yard a few miles north of where this took place, which could be impacted, of course, by any disturbance.
I think this is actually a pretty populated fucking area. This is not far from Chicago. And Chicago sprawls for a long ways.
On this rail line just outside Chicago. This part of the country is a major rail hub, and so this could have consequences far beyond Illinois. Let's bring in CBS News Chicago's Suzanne Lemineau. She is on the scene and can give us the latest information. Suzanne, what do we know?
Errol, at this moment, no injuries reported, as you just mentioned. One key thing, though, evacuations ongoing at this moment. We're told the areas impacted here that they are evacuating 1 mile south of Main Street, also and 217th, 1 mile west of Main Street, along with a quarter mile east of Main Street. Now, as we show you the scene overhead from Chopper, we've been told by CN Rail there are 20 cars that have been involved in this freight train derailment. They are carrying various substances. At least one car may be leaking. They have been painstakingly going over every single car to make sure that there are no substances leaking from the others in question here among the 20 total. Now, it's not yet known.
It's gonna be another fucking Palestine. Well, it looks like there's like 20,000 people who live in Madison. But like they were saying, this winds up putting unexpected strain on this most used rail hub in the United States. And we've been talking about how all of this sort of infrastructure stuff has been getting destroyed by these extreme weather events, and this just does not help with things at all. Okay. You watched the debate without commentary? Why would I be offended by that? Oh, because you didn't watch the stream? That's okay. It was painful to watch. Okay, let's look at this. This is from Reuters. Actually, no. Yes. Reuters. Let's talk about some business and real estate stuff. This is from 13 hours ago. H&M shares plunged amid profit doubts.
There has been a lot of hype about the massive benefits
H&M shares plummeted almost 14% on Thursday morning. Investors were put off after the fashion giant missed earnings forecasts and predicted a fall in sales for June. H&M said sales this month are likely to drop 6% against a year earlier, partly due to poor weather in many markets. The update cast doubt on whether the Swedish firm can meet its 10% full-year profit margin target. CEO Daniel Över said the group still believed it could hit that number, but warned the target was now harder to reach. He pointed at factors that influence purchasing expenses and sales revenues, including material costs and exchange rates. Över warned such factors will have a more negative impact than expected in the second quarter.
Now, one thing that's happening that they're not talking about in this piece is that people are kind of waking up to the blatant sort of profit seeking that's been happening on the backs of the consumer by corporations. You know, people started hearing about these, you know, board meetings and stuff where they're just completely you know, just applauding themselves for having ripped off people by just jacking up prices even if it didn't cost them more. And I think people are starting to realize that and kind of push back on some of this in some ways. And I think they're starting to see some negative downstream effects of this. Or I guess this is what trickle up capitalism looks like when people realize they're getting fucked and just stop. But no, it's not real. Not trickle up. You know, I can't think of a good way to describe what's happening there, but do you get what I mean though with this? Because the dynamic I think is starting to shift with the way people are looking at these prices, and they're questioning whether or not this is actually being induced by corporations, because it was being completely ignored for quite some time, literally years, by the mainstream media. Really only certain like progressive online channels were even discussing the possibility that there was price gouging happening. Let's talk a little bit more about this, because Walgreens is also cutting its profit view and is looking to shut even more stores on bad news. Poor Walgreens, so sad.
Shares of Walgreens Boots Alliance lost as much as a quarter of their value Thursday morning after the company cut its profit forecast for the current fiscal year and said it would close more underperforming stores. It also posted quarterly earnings that missed expectations. The pharmacy chain operator said it could shutter a quarter of its U.S. locations. CEO Tim Wentworth, who came on board last October, has set in motion a complete overhaul at Walgreens through store closures, the removal of multiple mid-level executives, and a $1 billion cost-cutting plan. Earlier this year, Walgreens halved its dividend to 25 cents per share in an attempt to conserve cash as sticky inflation dampened spending on over-the-counter products and pressure increases on reimbursement payments for filling prescriptions.
Now, I find this whole thing pretty laughable. I mean, it's in fact problematic for some people, as people in some cases are in healthcare deserts and need these stores. Just want to remind everybody of this. When was this? This was earlier this year, I think. Let me just click this. Walgreens when was this written? In just 1 year, they repurchased $10 billion worth of shares, it looks like. Yeah. They've done plenty of stock buybacks for themselves, But the second that those profits go down even slightly, they start threatening to close stores all over the place. Oh no. Well, you know what? Maybe you should just take less profits. There's an idea. Just accept it. You don't need to pay. Let's look at how much does the Walgreens CEO make? $28 million. CEO Roz Brewer was the highest paid female chief executive in 2021. Wow. Wow, $30 million. Okay, yeah, no, there's no money anywhere to find, of course. It's all the consumers' fault for not spending enough. That's the problem. Why won't they? Why won't they accept our high prices? Okay, now let's talk a little bit about cities. First, let's talk about San Francisco here, which has hit a record high vacancy rate on its commercial real estate, as the return to the office thing never really happened.
Well, downtown San Francisco continues to struggle. New numbers for the second quarter of this year show a new record high for vacant office space.
It's the highest of any major market in the country. Investigative reporter Hilda Gutierrez joins us in the newsroom now. And Hilda, you found that there are some positive indicators.
Oh, positive.
Yes, the new data shows signs that the city's free-falling office market is stabilizing. Rates are still rising, but at its lowest pace recorded, showing that businesses are having greater confidence to make long-term.
Who wrote this? Who wrote this? Who wrote this copy? Rates rising slower, in fact, doesn't actually say anything about whether or not investors will be feeling better, or whether or not the vacancy rate is continuing to go up. It is, in fact, continuing to go up, not just in commercial real estate, but also in like retail spaces as well. It's just at historic vacancies, not just in San Francisco, but all across the country in many municipalities. You know, it's got a lot to do with the way that our economy just has become this sort of just monolithic. What do you call it? It's not monopsony. I can't think of the fucking word, but it's basically, you know, it's just a few corporations that like run like everything, right? Amazon has destroyed most retail businesses, right? Online shopping has made it so that going to a store is more work than getting something online. You know, like, we need to start thinking very strongly about how we're going to deal with all these spaces in terms of, you know, like, not waiting for necessarily, like, people to repurpose themselves in some cases. I think we need to start considering, like, how we make some of these high rises and other giant malls into housing and other kinds of like live, work, whatever types of spaces, right? Where it's not solely focused on capitalism, but isn't somehow focused on the humanity centric thinking. You're still recovering from the debate? I'm still recovering from the debate. We're on the same page. At least with that. Okay, let's look at this. This is a positive story, at least for some. Certainly something to think about here. This is from 8 hours ago from 6 ABC Philadelphia, where according to them, Philadelphia was named the most walkable city to visit for the second year in a row.
In the morning buzz, well, sure, Philadelphia often ranks as one of the worst cities for traffic and driving, but when it comes to walking, The city of brotherly love is tops.
I would agree. USA Today readers voted Philadelphia the most walkable city to visit for the second year in a row. The city beats other metropolitan areas like New York, Boston, and Chicago.
Philadelphia's tourism groups point out Center City's easy-to-navigate corridor spanning 26 blocks from the Delaware River to the Schuylkill River.
USA Today says visitors can stroll through the historic Old City and gorgeous neighborhoods like Rittenhouse Square. I think we've got a great building concrete ratio to grass. There's so many pocket parks and other parks.
Never done that computation, but I bet you're right.
Well,
one thing that they don't even consider during this whole discussion that I thought of immediately when I heard this, because I wasn't actually aware of this until I saw this, but the thing that comes to my mind immediately is that Boston was created before cars were invented. You know, like New York City, right? And in fact, they're both easier to get around without cars, as it turns out. And you can, you can walk places, or it just that was thought through by people who were thinking about walking. And we need to somehow get our mindsets in there to at least consider how we continue to plan and build cities. Yeah. Okay. I was almost redeemable. I'm not sure what that means. I'm going to try to not take that as some sort of a character assassination. Okay, let's go on to this story to sort of segue us into our next segment. This is from Reuters from 9 hours ago, where BP, otherwise known as British Petroleum, has decided to go slow on renewables to help woo investors.
Follow the rich white man.
BP is having a change of heart on renewables. New boss Murray Auchincloss has decided to slow investment in big budget, low carbon projects, particularly offshore wind farms. That's all according to Reuters sources. It marks a stark reversal of the direction taken under predecessor Bernard Looney. He tried to drive BP away from dependence on fossil fuels. That strategy didn't impress investors, however, with shares in the firm underperforming other.
See, this is why we can't leave fixing the climate up to big business, right? It can be changed. It can be changed instantaneously, and it literally is all dependent upon on money, on stock price, on revenue. Are we making enough money on saving the planet? Oh no, we better go back to doing fossil fuels then. So sorry for even suggesting that. That was a bad idea. Saving the planet, not a good plan. Instead, let's just make as much money as possible.
Oil players. European rival Shell has already scaled back its investments in many renewables. Now the sources say Auchincloss wants to prioritise investing in and even acquiring new oil and gas assets. Green energy projects will be assessed to see if they can deliver quick returns. The firm has reportedly already reassigned people who had been tasked with finding more such.
Oh, God. So funny. Does anybody remember, like, all of the sort of, like, commercials BP was doing? Like, trying to tout how they were attempting to greenify their energy production. I feel like I saw so many of them. Especially, I'm trying to think, it was like not that long after the oil spill in the Gulf. I want to say like a year or so after, they like started blasting these commercials. But no, they decide that's a bad idea. Saving the earth, not worth it. Especially when the stock price goes down. I mean, my God. Ugh, how could we possibly survive with a low stock price? That would be bad.
Help! I'm being repressed!
Okay, let's go on to this. Can you please have another support character? You may absolutely have another support character. 15. 15. Who's 15? Is that Pink Panther? I think that might be Pink Panther. I can't remember. Alright, we looked at this earlier, but I just want to look at this again. This is still ongoing, from what I understand, to some degree. This is from a couple of days ago, CBC News, where a fire jumped a river in Churchill Falls. Wait, what is NL? I always forget what NL stands for. It's not New Brunswick. New Labrador?
We are tracking breaking news on the dangerous wildfires burning near Churchill Falls in Labrador. Officials are now evacuating people still in the town after news broke just last hour that one of the fires has jumped the river. That was serving as part of a fire break to keep the town safe. CBC's Peter Cowan is in St. John's with the latest. So, Peter, what does this development mean here, that this fire has jumped the river?
Yeah, this river has really acted as a natural fire break to protect the town of Churchill Falls from this fire that's 1,500 hectares in size. And unfortunately, Mother Nature was not cooperating today. High temperatures into the high 20s, along with low humidity and some winds that are blowing today from the southwest. And so that's fueling the fire, and it actually pushed some of those flames over the river onto the community of Churchill Falls. And because that fire has crossed the river, that's why they are now removing about 100 or so people that were still in the town in order to keep the hydroelectric plant that is there up and running. This is a very important plant, and they just kept sort of a minimal number of people. But now that the fire has crossed the river, they've decided to pull even those essential workers out. And the
Yeah. Okay. So that fire, from my understanding, is still ongoing. Not yet contained. June is Men's Mental Health Care Awareness Month. That is true. That is true. And we actually discussed men's mental health on Father's Day. I got them all together in on one day. And maybe we don't talk about it quite enough, but I think we did a decent job on Father's Day. But you're right, we've also been talking about Pride Month. We've been talking about fucking literally everything. It is almost July, too. You're right. It's got like 2 more days left. What was I doing? Oh, right. Moving on to this story, which was relevant to the last story, as this is, according to researchers, Canada's 2023 wildfire season spewed out far more heat-trapping gas than all the planes on Earth.
That's hot.
We estimated that the forest fires in Canada released about 2.98.
Hold on. I almost forgot. And I'm trying to do this at least a couple of times a stream. And I can't keep forgetting to do this. It's unacceptable. Where is it? Ah, yes, here it is. Okay. Oh, Princess Mononoke. Redeemed Hydrate. Didn't even see it. Well, speaking of hydrating, on Twitch, all of you viewers are about to be hit with an ad break. courtesy of this man behind me, Jeffy Bezos. Now, I get a sense that many of you may not be a fan of Mr. Jeffy Bezos, and if you'd like to stick it to him, well, you got one good option. If you're already a Amazon Prime subscriber, you get a free Twitch Prime sub every single goddamn month, which you could give to your favorite streamer. You can take that money from Jeff Bezos, which he makes absolutely nothing on, and you give it to me. That's right. It's a much better option than just giving Twitch money to avoid ads. You can just take it from Jeff Bezos. It's a great plan. Otherwise, you're about to get hit with an ad. Okay, back to this. Discussing the carbon footprint of 2023's fire season. Whoopsies, what's going on? There we go.
We estimated that the forest fires in Canada released about 2.98 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which is about 4 times as much carbon as global aviation sector, and about 25% higher than the emissions from all primary tropical tree cover loss in 2023. Forests worldwide are known as carbon sinks, so they remove a lot of carbon from the atmosphere, and that gets stored in their branches, their trunks, their leaves, kind of in the ground as well. And so when they burn, all the carbon that's stored within them gets released back into the atmosphere. And so that's kind of that connection between forest fires and carbon emissions. If you compare it to like fossil fuel emissions from countries, for example, I think it was on the level of Russia in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide that was released. And so it definitely does have an impact. I mean, that is only 1 year, and the emissions from countries are annual, so they're continually compounding each other. But it definitely does have an impact on the global scale in terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like his somewhat optimistic outlook, but let's be real. Canada's fire season this year has started off to a pretty wild start, if you will. Pardon the pun, but wildfire season this year has started very violently, and it seems like fire season continues to get worse and worse every year. Maybe I'm just reading into things too much, but it just genuinely feels this way. And the data would seem to show that it is in fact headed in that direction as well. What was I doing? Ah, yes, moving on from Canada's fires. Although it's just a very disturbing frigging, like, I almost don't want to move away from it, right? Because like, if it's just Canada's fires that equals all of the planes flying in the world annually, you start thinking about, I don't know, the fires that have been happening in Brazil or in the United States or in other places that we have been seeing. All that adding up starts to really make you worry about how we seem to be getting into some sort of, well, I guess you'd call it a cycle of terrible, right? We keep adding more heat-trapping gases to the environment. Our environment gets worse, and some of these worse things wind up becoming actual emitters of heat-trapping gases themselves. And the volcanoes. Yep, and the volcanoes. Jerry's right. Yeah, we got some stuff happening. Alright, let's just go slightly south. This is from 16 hours ago, where huge clouds of smoke are billowing out from central Oregon as a wildfire there is growing rapidly. Jesus, that smoke cloud is monstrous. And this thing is not yet contained either. At least to my understanding, this was not from that long ago. Okay. Let's go to this one. In just slightly further south, in the East Bay. NBC Bay Area from 17 hours ago, where a fire is now threatening homes.
Busy night for firefighters in the East Bay as well. NBC's Tom Jensen is with us. He is in Brentwood. Tom, a fire there threatening hundreds of homes. What do we have?
Well, Raj, you know, we hear so much about lives and homes that are lost in fires like this, but tonight people here are praising firefighters for the lives and the homes they saved from this fast-moving brush fire that swept right towards their neighborhood. The Empire Mine Fire started in a semi-rural area near what appears to be an operating oil well along Deer Valley Road between Brentwood and Antioch. Locals say the area is prone to fires, which are often knocked down by aggressive ground attacks.
You know, I've been here before when this whole place was on fire here. There was no air tankers.
The fire spread quickly, and Todd Riley says he called 911 to report it.
All of a sudden, it just, boom, took off.
Winds pushed the flames towards a heavily developed area of Brentwood near Highway 4 and Belfour Road.
Oh, it's getting closer.
Sophia couldn't believe what she was seeing, so she recorded everything.
I wasn't scared. I was just really intrigued.
She made sure her family was evacuated and turned the sprinklers on to protect the property. Others were ready to go when firefighters said it was time to evacuate.
We had all of our stuff packed, all of the important stuff, you know, passports, things like that.
Helicopters dropped load after load of water, and CAL FIRE bombers repeatedly dumped retardant in front of the flames as neighbors watched in shock.
It was really, really bad.
Were you worried?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, when it got here, and all the smoke is right there. The planes are just going crazy right here.
Before sundown, everyone was back home cleaning cars and property painted pink with fire retardant. Firefighters fresh off the lines joined them in the effort. Everyone counting their blessings and thanking these firefighters for their work on the ground.
So, one good, I mean, it's hard to call it good, but one good end to a wildfire story here. And it wrapped itself up pretty quickly, but that looks like a situation that could have gotten out of control very fast. Thankfully, the fire department did its job quite well in this regard and saved people and their homes. Okay, now we have been talking about the next situation for some time. I want to say at least like 3 or 4 days, but it has been ongoing for that amount of time, so it is apt. Let's start with this one from CBS Evening News, discussing the floodwaters which have been wreaking havoc across the Midwest.
There's a new round of severe storms slamming the Midwest tonight, creating fresh havoc. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell. And we're going to begin our broadcast once again tonight with wild weather in the U.S. It has been our lead story almost every night for the past 10 days. And that's because it's been the hottest, wettest start for summer ever in some areas, all made more likely by climate change. The extreme weather is having dire consequences. Authorities keeping a close eye tonight on this Minnesota dam that is facing an imminent failure. In South Dakota, entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. And for about 60 million Americans, a significant heat wave continues.
Okay, yeah, this is just a continuation of the heat and flooding we've been seeing. But this is from a couple of days ago. Let's get further into this. I just wanted to remind everybody of what happened, and if anybody has missed our coverage of this.
Severe flooding is affecting millions of people in the Midwest. On Tuesday, President Biden approved a major disaster declaration for Iowa, where evacuations were ordered following heavy rainfall. At least one person was killed in South Dakota. And in Minnesota, the National Guard has been activated to help against rising floodwaters. CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen has more from Mankato, Minnesota.
Hey there, Jeff. Well, as you can see behind me, a crowd has begun to gather to catch a glimpse of the situation here. And honestly, the pictures speak for themselves. This is the Rapidan Dam, and you can see those powerful rapids have carved a path around the western part of the dam, essentially taking part of the roadway and...
Yeah, and let's just go to this, because this was what happened just shortly after that video came out. They knew the dam was failing? I have not heard that. But I know they could have certainly done some stuff to at least, you know, prevent as much stuff as what came down the river to wind up clogging it. And I think there probably was a way at least to have foreseen this happening. And I don't know, like engineer. There was a report in I'm gonna have to look into that. You know what? Okay, hold on though. That house we just saw disappeared in like a half a second. It's gone. Jesus Christ. Okay. They knew the dam was failing. I feel like I need to look into this. You were in Top Chat? Wait, why am I in Top Chat now? I started the... Oh, wait, no. This is the second stream of the day. I didn't switch it to the live chat for this one. Thank you for mentioning that, Monoip. I wasn't in Top Chat for the last hour. Definitely not. It's ridiculous. Okay. Now, let's look at some of the cleanup that has been going on after this flooding.
Millions of Americans across the Midwest remain under threat of severe flooding, with several major rivers still rising, and they may not crest until later this week. CBS's Tom Hansen spoke with homeowners in Minnesota who have lost everything.
For days, this house sat perilously on the river's edge close to Minnesota's Rapidan Dam, and then, in a heartbeat...
Hold on, sorry, I meant to pause that faster. I don't know if you all heard that, but she said that the rivers aren't even expected to crest, which means they won't even be at their highest point until later this week. Now, this story came out from... What was this? This is about 20 hours ago or so, and so I guess that means either now or tomorrow, potentially even, I guess, Saturday or not Sunday, because that's the beginning of the next week. But yeah, it's not even close to being done, apparently. More so than I thought.
It was gone. Jenny Barnes' childhood home and half a century of memories.
This is our life, and it's such a beautiful place. It's just a loss of history, and it's sad.
The Blue Earth River continues to surge, and the ground is still giving way. The threat remains very real to several communities downstream. The recent rains in the Midwest, 600% above normal. Homes and crops, a way of life, destroyed.
600% above normal. That is unbelievable. That number is just insane.
By record flooding. It's taken a toll on aging infrastructure as well. Not just this dam, which is more than a century old, but also roads and bridges washed away. This was Minnesota's governor after surveying a damaged highway.
The engineers built that for a 500-year flood. That was 14 years ago. So the 500-year flood came in 14 years.
The Midwest is experiencing more days of extreme rainfall, events expected to be wetter and more intense due to climate change. Just as...
Woof. Imagine coming out of your front door and seeing that. I guess our house is just in a lake now. It even has, what do you call that stuff? Floating around. I know there's a specific name. Duckweed? I think it's called duckweed. Okay. Although I guess it could be anything. 600% increase is insane. I agree. It is breaking my mind right now. Like, some of the statistics we hear, I feel like sometimes I'm almost like just somewhere between being completely desensitized to the destruction and just being like just swimming in a sea of figures and being like, what in the fuck? How do we fix this one? Like, how do we fix that one? Like, it's just getting worse. It just feels like it's getting worse and worse, and we're just, you know, we're just getting started with storm season right now. I thought we were done with tornado season, and then we saw an EF5. It's just insane. By the way, they have more footage of this sinkhole that we saw on stream yesterday, and I gotta see this. So let's go to this one. Oops, that's not the right one. Wait, am I ahead of myself? Oh, wait. Oh, okay, let's go to this one. Sorry. One last one about the flooding. This is from 10 hours ago.
The ripple effect of these severe storms that hit the U.S. last night, but this time the Northeast felt the impact. Powerful winds sent trees falling onto homes in parts of New York and New Jersey last night. Most of the bad weather this week has affected the Midwest, including historic flooding that damaged farming communities in the Midwest, raising fears that food prices will go up again soon. Jonah Kaplan of CBS Minnesota spoke to farm owners in South Dakota where soybean and cornfields were swamped by the storms.
You can see water was at least this deep in here.
Another day, another cleanup in Union County, South Dakota. This was Dave and Judy Oberg's home on Sunday. Yesterday, they took us inside to see what's left of it.
You're going to lose furniture, you're going to lose appliances, but with this house, you're losing a piece of yourself.
That's right. It will never be the same. I've lived in this house my whole life.
Yeah, well, once a house is like, you know, multiple feet underwater, it just doesn't go back to being the same. We build our houses with like paper, you know. There's a lot of paper involved when you think about it, and other stuff that does not fare well in water, such as wood. Drywall is literally just basically paper, by the way. A little bit of plaster in between. Yeah, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. We got stuff to... Yeah, mold problems. Absolutely. That's the main one. The story is still in here. You know what? Let's look at this story about the EF5 again. This shit is just insane. It's still in my list somehow.
Tonight, as America's onslaught of severe weather rages on,
Tornado on the ground.
A fearless team of storm-chasing scientists is shedding new light on the power of last month's deadly EF4 twister that leveled parts of Greenfield, Iowa.
Wind speeds in this tornado topped 300 miles per hour.
Yeah, so with our radar, we calculated wind speeds of over 300 miles per hour, which is very fast and very strong wind speeds.
300 miles per hour. Only the third tornado ever recorded with winds that strong. And it moved, they say, at up to 55 miles per hour, twice a twister's typical speed.
It's very rare. 1%, 2% of tornadoes.
Just insane. Just insane. You can't save soaked drywall. Totally true. I don't think I heard it last time. I think I was probably just distracted, but apparently that twister happened weeks ago. They're just discussing what these scientists found in terms of data. Which actually makes me feel slightly better, because yesterday, when we first watched it, I thought that it was from very recently, or at least within the last few days. It gives me some solace, I suppose. Alright, let's go on to this. This is that fucking sinkhole that we saw earlier yesterday, I think. It's just more footage of what it looks like after the fact. We saw, I mean, this shit was wild. I just couldn't help but look at, like, the aftermath of this.
Come to the screen and check out this video. That light pole just sinking into the ground, all of that dirt coming up. This is in the Alton soccer field, right in the middle of it. This is our drone video. We're going to take a closer look at what caused this 100-foot
Can't even see the pole down
hole.
there.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Ann Allred. Mike Bush has the night off.
Oh my
the collapse
God.
happened this morning at the Gordon Moore Park soccer.
What did I say yesterday? It was like, yo, this pole just disappeared. It literally did disappear. Holy fuck. That is just so... that is disturbing. That is fucking... And it happened so quickly. I wish there was a video of somebody right next to it. Not... For only the reason of I wish I knew just how much warning somebody standing next to it would have gotten. Because it appears to have just been captured on, I think, like, surveillance video or something. Nobody was on the field, but, oh my god.
Equal parts. Oh my gosh.
We don't need to discuss this too much. I'm still shocked by that footage. You wonder if sinkholes are caused by emptied aquifers. They are to some degree. I know that's true. But there's also other things involved. Sometimes it's erosion. Sometimes it's what's it called? Ah, fuck. My brain just broke. Sorry. Today will not be a geology lesson. I'm sorry. I am fallible. I've just forgotten what I was trying to say. Quicksand. I thought quicksand was going to be way bigger of a thing in adult life, to be honest. Looney Tunes and other such sort of things led me astray, I feel. You know, I did a lot of preparation for quicksand in adulthood, and nothing... it really hasn't come in handy at all. Okay, now let's talk about that heat, which was mentioned earlier.
So hot right now.
Let's start with this one from 5 hours ago. CBS says extreme heat is leading to more emergency room visits in the United States.
Scorching temperatures and oppressive heat have led to more emergency room visits across the U.S. According to the CDC, there have been extremely high rates of heat-related illnesses in parts of the country, and the summer has only just begun. Dr. Owais Durrani is joining us now to talk a little bit more about this. He's an emergency.
The Midwest has had 1,500 heat-related illnesses? Good Lord. Already? It's not even July.
Dr. Owais Durrani is joining us now to talk a little bit more about this. He's an emergency medicine physician. So, man, I know that the heat can really sneak up on people. Can we talk about just what sort of things you're seeing in emergency rooms because of the heat wave?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Look, I think heat is something that sometimes we take mildly, but if you look at heat-related deaths last year, it killed more people than hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. So it's a silent killer, but it is a killer. And that correlates to what I'm seeing in the emergency department. We're seeing everything from kind of more minor things to like sunburns.
Did you hear what he said? Heat-related illnesses kill more people than fires, hurricanes, and tornadoes? That is more than I thought. I knew it was a lot more than what like you might expect, but I did not realize it actually overtook those things. I have we talked about this before? Oh God, my brain
Kids
is like
playing
mush
outdoors,
today.
to moderate dehydration, to then more severe things. You've probably heard of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And so that kind of lies on the spectrum. And you see things where people start to get cramping, nausea, vomiting, lightheaded. Those are kind of the more milder symptoms in the heat exhaustion category. And then we see things like heat stroke, where our organs stop working because of how high that core body temperature gets. And that leads to things like slurred speech, difficulty walking, confusion. And so those are things that, unless they're treated immediately, will kill you. And so lots of kind of scary situations when it comes to the heat. And I think we need to talk about it in a serious manner, just like we do about tornadoes and hurricanes.
So, let's talk about it. So are certain people more susceptible to heat-related illnesses, or really are we all vulnerable?
So we're all vulnerable. Obviously, with various things, some of us are going to be more vulnerable. So kids, those with comorbid conditions, and the elderly are going to be the most vulnerable. Kids are going to get dehydrated really quick just because of how their body surface relates to their internal body area. They're also going to get sunburned a whole bunch because they haven't built.
Yeah, okay. I think we probably could have all guessed that children, elderly people, and people with comorbid diseases will be affected by this more than the normal people. But even if you're not not normal, that's the wrong word, but if you're not in one of those groups, you're still at risk, and we can't not treat ourselves as deserving of not dying from the heat. Seems simple, right? Although one group of people they don't talk about in this, if I recall correctly, are the homeless. Unhoused people are left to fend for themselves. In many cases, they are just essentially outside all day without any real access to shade or air conditioning and other things like that, which many people would take for granted. Of course, probably all know that. But speaking of air conditioners, let's talk about air conditioners. This is from 8 hours ago from the Associated Press. According to them, air conditioners are now a hot commodity.
So hot right now
in Nashville as the heat wave impacts Tennessee.
Okay, you're in our location where we have the air conditioners for our summer cooling program. We've been able to assist over 24 families since Thursday. We know it's been very hot, 96, 97 degrees temperature here in Nashville, probably one of the hottest Junes I feel like I've been a part of. But we just want to be a blessing to families, especially seniors, families with young children. We know it gets hot. Their physical well-being is very important to us, so we want to make sure we can serve as many families as we can. Well, last year was the biggest summer. We had about over 200. So with this heat wave that's going now, we just got 60 in. So I can assume that we're going to have another hot summer. So we might even pass that what we did last year, but we want to be prepared and ready just in case.
This story makes me feel good inside. It almost makes me feel cooler. But yeah, we need more stuff like this happening. That is helpful to people who need it. Okay, one last story discussing the heat. Well, discussing it specifically in the United States. This is from 10 hours ago from the Associated Press, where an Abe Lincoln wax sculpture has melted in DC due to a heat wave. Now, I think this is like some sort of like famous wax sculpture, which has been here for a while, and I'm not 100% on this one. Although I don't know how it could possibly have survived. So I may.
I found out about this on the WTOP website. They had an article on it, and about this wax statue of Abraham Lincoln. And I was curious, I mean, who thought putting a wax statue outdoors in the middle of summer was a good idea?
I feel like this has actually got to be some kind of a statement, right? About how, I don't know, democracy is melting or something. I don't know. I think he kind of hit it on the head. Who would, in fact, think it's a good idea? The more I think about it, DC is always hot enough every summer to melt a statue. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but a wax, I don't feel is conducive to the swampy environment of DC.
I've lived in the city for 53 years. I've lived the first 10 years here with no air conditioning, if you can believe that, because I grew up in New Jersey. We didn't have air conditioning, so to me that was normal.
Hold on, I'm trying to read this thing. What does this say? Please respect this installation, the students of Garrison Elementary, in the history of Camp Barker, commissioned by Cultural DC, funded in part by DC Committees on Arts and Humanities. It's kind of blocked off by this sign. Art building. This artwork serves as a poignant commentary on DC's Civil War contraband camps. A former. This doesn't seem like did they really just not think it through? Either way.
So hot right now.
I thought maybe it was like a commentary on democracy or on the climate. No, it seems to be for something else. Maybe they thought it was going to withstand the insane heat. I don't know whose idea this was. They have sundown towns in the Northeast. A lot of those laws were never actually taken off the books. People just stopped enforcing them to some degree. But the cops can basically just use these sorts of things. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's wild that these sorts of laws could still exist. But there's still other laws that also exist that shouldn't exist either. It's just the paradox of supposedly modern society. Let's go on to this here from 5 hours ago from the Associated Press, where a female capybara has arrived at the Florida Zoo as part of a breeding program. Not gonna lie, the second I said the word capybara, I started thinking of that song in my head. Can you all hear it right now in your head? Capybara. Capybara.
So we're here meeting our capybara Iari. Now Iari means strong heart. And so I think if you're going to be a capybara that's going to be with another capybara named Zeus, you got to have a strong heart. These two were recommended to be put together by the AZA's Species Survival Plan. Now, it's very important that these animals can get together so that their genetics are good in case they need to be introduced back in the wild.
Look, it's not a human breeding program, okay? It's a capybara breeding program. I think we can be okay with this one.
So ultimately, it's up to them when they get
together.
So they're in a situation now
Oh,
where they can interact with each other,
cute.
but there's still a barrier between the two.
Not gonna lie,
And so
I
once
think
we see a
capybaras
lot
are
of
the greatest.
positivity with those interactions, then we'll put them into the same space and we'll see what happens. It's just like you going out on a date. You might have a group of friends that's pumping you up and getting you excited for your date to go meet somebody. We'll do the same thing with these two and hope that love is in the air.
Now that he's said love is in the air, all I can think is Lion King. Oh, God. Okay, let's move on. They're going on a date, that's right. Capybara date. Capybara. Okay. I just figured we'd watch something that's not high stakes, such as capybara breeding. Seemed fun in comparison to everything else we do. Oh, this one is too. This is an interesting discovery, which I don't know necessarily what sort of ramifications this has, but I found it fascinating. This is from PBS Terra from a day ago. According to them, an accidental discovery has been found inside of sea urchin poop.
The thing I love about urchins is that they'll make themselves little hats. They put stuff on their heads to be invisible for predators. So this little guy here has made himself a little kelp hat. One of the things that I discovered during my PhD, which will forever be my favorite piece of research I've done, is that the baby kelps, they actually fertilize inside urchin poo. Imagine being a little gametified in the ocean and you want to find someone to reproduce with. That might be really hard if you're really, really tiny. Being concentrated in the gut of these urchins helps, you know, meet someone that you want to have a baby with. Hot dating scene. Exactly.
So two very, very hot dating scenes, as she put it just now. Capybaras on capybara action, as well as sea urchin action happening inside of a sea urchin poop. Shocking. I would never have associated poop with the place to put your babies, but I do see the logic behind it. Yeah, it was completely unknown, and she just happened upon this discovery by way of some hypothesis she had that was uninvolved with that. Yeah, kind of just happened upon this scientific discovery. Okay, now let's go south. All the way down to Brazil, which we've been talking about for a number of reasons. But I want us to go back to talking about this. If you all recall, we were discussing the floods that happened in the southeast of Brazil, and oh God, what's the name of the town, the area? Rio do Sul, I think. But that city is not a town; it's a city. It was a big ass fucking place. That city is now being called a ghost town, and a climate warning to the world, as these floodwaters have not receded and has left the entire city inundated. There we go.
So the way the house is going, it looks like the water went that way.
Yeah, I think.
My God. This is from a day ago? Oh my god. Oh my god. Jesus. How is it still this bad? I mean, of course it's still this bad. Why? Why? Why are we in this situation?
The wildfires, the
What was the... I can't remember. I have to look this up again. What was the fucking population of Rio de Janeiro?
in Brazil of what we may be. So it was a ghost town because you had, like, it was underwater for almost 40 days.
75,000
And so there was
people.
there wasn't even any rats running around. Like everything had died.
75,000 people are just from the area of Rio de Sul, and that's just a tiny portion of the area that flooded. Because it did actually hit some other areas around it, but Rio de Sul just happened to be, I think, the largest of the cities there. Climate refugee situation is continuing to get worse, although these people are just being displaced internally, so I guess they aren't technically refugees. You have little capybara figures from a claw machine? Sounds pretty sweet. What am I doing now? Got a few more stories to look at here today. This one is from 6 hours ago, where in Borneo, elephants are endangered due to human activity.
Elephants living on the South Asian island of Borneo have become endangered, and human activities such as agriculture, mining and logging are to blame. That's according to a recent assessment by wildlife experts. The International Union for Conservation of Nature says there are around 1,000 Bornean elephants left in the wild. Craig Hilton-Taylor heads the IUCN Red List Unit, which assesses animal species risk of extinction.
1,000 individuals, of which only 400 are mature. Those are the breeding individuals. It's a small population, and it could easily disappear if we just let development happen without any conservation actions.
The IUCN says the number of Bornean elephants has decreased over the last 75 years, initially due to extensive logging. The animals have since entered human-dominated areas, searching for food. That in turn can cause them to destroy crops and face retribution killing. Malaysian.
Even though where Borneo is in southeastern Asia, these elephants were driven out of their habitats, and it's caused a great deal of problems for them as a result. Okay. Your money is on explosion? I don't know what that means. Don't know what that means. Alright. Now let's talk about one other story in Asia as well. This is from Reuters from earlier today. How record heat is pushing Delhi's firefighters to the brink.
A team of firefighters raced down the streets of Delhi on this sweltering day in June. They are responding to a major blaze at a worn-down building that houses textile shops in the old quarter of the Indian capital. It took some 250 firefighters to douse the flames. Summer is particularly busy for the Delhi fire services, but firefighter Indirva Singh can't recall responding to as many fires as this year.
In my 32-year-long career, this has been the hottest year, and Delhi fire services have received the most fire calls this year. We get at least 200 to 250 calls a day.
250 calls
Temperatures
a day.
in Delhi have hit record highs this year, with the mercury hitting nearly 120 degrees Fahrenheit on several occasions.
120.
Scientists say the heat is being worsened by human-driven climate change.
My God.
Fire services data shows there were more than 9,000 fire calls between April and June. That's more than double from a year ago. And deaths more than tripled in that period, from 10 a year ago. Reuters spoke to more than a dozen firefighters and officers. Many describe working in doubly strenuous conditions of extreme heat and surging fires. Their shifts are 24 hours long, followed by a day of rest.
Jesus. We haven't even been really discussing. I think we only discussed like one of the wildfires that have been going on in India. For some reason, I don't know why. Because we've definitely discussed things that have been happening in India. But adding that to the list of places that are having fires like this is genuinely distressing to me. Considering what we were just talking about earlier in the stream regarding the amount of missions coming out of these fires. Oh God, okay. May you recommend the series Nat Geo Secrets of Elephants. It would be best if you'd recommend it to me in the Discord. It's a much higher probability of me remembering to check that out if I have it somewhere that I will definitely see at some point. But yeah, we may absolutely recommend it. All right. Alright, it is that time again. Galactic Intermission. If you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. They both really help me out. Likes with the algorithm and the subscribers with me getting this goddamn channel monetized on YouTube. As we are still going unpaid by our corporate Google overlords. So, if you've already done those two things, well, you only have one option, really. Go to Patreon and become a galactic producer, where space benefits await you. Alright, chat, I will be right back. Why can't I see myself? Where am I? I might have gotten hit by the yacht. I don't have any recollection of it. The Galactic. Exactly, Beacon. Exactly. I'm gonna run this ad break on Twitch right now for all you Twitch viewers because we're gonna start the show soon, so you're at least you're not gonna miss any of that. Do it early by 2 minutes. Okay. Pitch and Pitch Jr. are headed out. Okay, good seeing you both. Okay, let's do it. Please watch over StreamLord during this difficult time. Thank you, BCat. Thank you for your prayers. May Gary be with you all. Okay. Well, we definitely have some global things to talk about, so I suppose we better get right to it. First, though, let's talk about this story, which affects me personally. This is from Euronews from a day ago, where Europe is seeking solutions to remedy increasing space debris.
More and more satellites are being sent to space. Most of them move in what is known as low Earth orbit, about 1,000 kilometers from Earth. Yet, the increase of satellites has expanded demands to maintain a sustainable and clean space and to avoid coalitions. This was one of the topics of discussion at the European Space Forum in Brussels. Some companies have already started some projects to bring internet to remote places and are adapting the satellites.
Ugh. God. We need to do something about this space junk. It's terrible. You want Gary to rescue me? From what specifically? From what is Gary rescuing me? Exactly. I feel okay. I'm alright. I'm here. I'm alive. We just junk up wherever we go. It does seem to be the case. Thankfully, the Galactic space station is low impact. Okay, now on to earthly news, if you will. This is from a day ago. We were talking about this recently, but I figured we would talk about it a little bit more. Let's see here. Let's start with this one. It's from BBC News from 19 hours ago, where Bolivian police have arrested the leader of the failed coup attempt. Go web go.
Now let's move on to Bolivia, where hundreds of soldiers with armoured vehicles have withdrawn from the presidential palace after what appeared to be an attempted military coup. Heavily armed troops had taken over the city's main square, with one armoured car trying to ram the doors of the presidential palace. Bolivia's president denounced what he called the irregular mobilization by some units of the Bolivian army, saying democracy must be respected. He then addressed the nation alongside his cabinet, calling on the Bolivian people and social groups to mobilize against the attempted coup. The president and vice president have also greeted supporters in the Plaza Murillo after police retook control. The public prosecutor's office says it's to launch a criminal investigation against a top general, Juan Jose Zuniga, and others for leading the insurrection. Well, let's now speak to our Colombia correspondent for BBC Mundo, Jose Carlos Cueto. Good to have you on the programme. So just explain in more detail what was going on in Bolivia. It's been a very tumultuous 24 hours, hasn't it?
Yeah, there seem to be calmer hours now in Bolivia.
Yeah, but we're not going to listen to this BBC piece. We're going to move on to this from Democracy Now! Hold on. Why is it? Why do you want to fight me? There we go.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
In Bolivia, thousands filled the streets of the capital La Paz Wednesday to confront military forces who tried to carry out a coup against democratically elected President Luis Arce. Fuera, or get out, people shouted at military forces. Bolivian President Arce addressed the protesters.
It fills us with bravery, courage to keep resisting, to keep on resisting any coup attempt, because Bolivia deserves its democracy, which has been won in the streets and with blood brothers and sisters.
Hours after the failed coup, Bolivian authorities arrested rogue military commander General Zuniga and his alleged co-conspirator, Navy Chief Juan Arnes. Meanwhile, President Arce has sworn in new heads of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. For more, we go to Cochabamba, Bolivia. We're joined by Catherine Lederber, director of the Andean Information Network. Catherine, welcome back to Democracy Now! Can you explain what just took place on Wednesday in Bolivia?
Thanks, Amy. Well, it's very hard to explain.
we had tanks filling the main plaza in front of the government palace. This all happened, a little bit after lunch at 1:30 p.m. This is after very strong statements from the top army commander, Zuniga, and this unexpected rush of tanks and of military personnel that really harked back to the 2019 coup that's still very fresh in Bolivia's memory. They forced their way into the political palace. Zuniga demanded the release of the 2019 coup political prisoners such as Fernando Camacho and Janine Áñez, made the obligatory reference to his testicles, always a part of a macho military move. And somehow the conflict within a number of hours diffused, and Zuniga walked away and Arce swore in new military leaders. But this is a military that's accustomed to having coups. It's a country that's had more military coups than any other Latin American country.
Yeah, that's a good point of context there. You love Juan? We all love Juan, or at least most. Any normal person loves Juan. Wait, Pac-Man is furiously drafting up a new coup denial. Why? Why would he? Why is he always doing things like this?
And we see here that the Bolivian armed forces aren't firmly entrenched in democracy still, and that the consequences of 2019 and the impunity that continues has really been corrosive here.
Catherine, if you could explain why this attempted military coup now, and what was the relationship between President Arce and the military chiefs?
Well, we're at a point in time where the Arce government's under a great deal of pressure. There's an economic crisis. The state lacks a lot of resources because of a great reduction in the income from oil and gas revenue, while the state has to continue to pay for imported petroleum at increasingly higher prices. So we have empty government coffers. We have a right wing that's discontent. We have a crisis with the Bolivian Constitutional Court extending its own mandate illegally, and that of the Supreme Court, and blocking judicial elections that are mandated by the Bolivian Constitution. You have the carryover from the 2019 coup, and really after that coup, although some military officers have been prosecuted and jailed, there hasn't been any restructuring of the armed forces. There hasn't been a fundamental change in vision. And I think that Arce, perhaps with the best intent, does not understand security issues very well. Remember that he was Morales' finance minister, and I don't think he's been particularly strategic in the choices that he's made for military commanders. And so you have an institution that appears to be not firmly under democratic control, a government that is feeling pressured and cornered. And at the same time, there's an intense conflict within the MAS party, a strong divide between Arce and his former boss, three-time President Evo Morales, that is.
Yeah. It's a very complex situation, honestly. We are normal people. Are you sure about that? Oh, no, we're not normal. Okay, just checking. What was I saying? Oh, I've heard multiple takes on this now at this point, but it does seem like a internal conflict that's happening between current and former leaders, with the military being involved, and it's it's the sort of thing that we really just need less of, to be perfectly honest, is these sorts of internal violent conflicts happening. Even if nobody was killed in these circumstances, it's still just it's not good. All right, now let's quickly look at this. This is from sometime yesterday. Julian Assange's wife made a statement after he was released, visited Australian Parliament, and thanked lawmakers for having secured his freedom.
Very happy to announce that earlier today the espionage case against Mr. Assange in the Eastern District of Virginia was formally dismissed, and the case against him is over, formally and officially. It's a case that never should have been brought, and I hope that we never have another case like it.
Julian plans to swim in the ocean every day. He plans to sleep in a real bed. He plans to taste real food. And he plans to enjoy his freedom. Julian is the most principled man I know, and he will always defend human rights and speak out against injustice. And he can choose how he does that because he is a free man.
Okay. Just figure we would see what his wife has to say after all of this. It is honestly a historical moment, really, considering the ramifications of all this, how long it took for any conclusion in this case. You know, it just genuinely seems like quite an important moment, even if it's not necessarily going to change things immediately, but it is I think it's a good thing for journalism, right? Okay, now let's go a bit east of, well, actually, I guess it was in Australia. I don't know why I put it here, because I was still thinking UK, because that's where Julian Assange was. Let's go east of London, I guess, but not east of Australia, to Serbia, where something rather concerning occurred. And I get weird feelings whenever I say concerning and Serbia in the same sentence. But this is from 4 hours ago from Euronews. According to them, Serbian police shut down a festival promoting cultural exchange with Kosovo.
Serbian police have banned a festival that promotes cultural exchanges with Kosovo. Belgrade police cited security concerns for stopping the event, saying they wanted to prevent danger to the security of people and property. Several dozen right-wing protesters staged a rally outside the Belgrade venue in a bid to prevent the event from going ahead. Kosovo is a former Serbian province and declared independence in 2008, a move Belgrade doesn't recognize.
I would also point out that the Serbs were not necessarily the people specifically that we're talking about, but the former Serbian people were heavily involved in a genocide against ethnic minorities in Kosovo, and to be shutting down cultural exchange between a former committer of ethnic cleansing and its formerly ethnically cleansed people doesn't seem like a a security concern to me. It in fact seems like something that needs to happen. Now, I know that Belgrade, which is the government, or the capital city of Serbia, is not a fan of even recognizing that any of that happened, among other things. But it's just very frustrating to me when I hear these kinds of things among everything else that we're hearing. This is just the last thing we need to hear, right? We should be promoting cultural exchanges and not holding on to sort of racist sentiments of old, if you will. Let's go on to Africa to discuss what's been happening in Sudan, because the war has been going on now for over 14 months, and people there are starving. 20 million people are under threat of starvation. Much of that has to do with the conflict. Some of it has to do with the fact that Sudan is also dealing with just a terrible drought as well, which is just complicating the situation further. But yeah, let's look at this piece from Associated Press from 12 hours ago discussing the last 14 months. Oh my god. We do not see enough of the fucking images out of this place. This is ridiculous. Why is it we're just now seeing these images? This is pissing me off. Associated Press, I think they finally decided to go to Sudan since the UN peacekeepers went in. But this is just like, what do you say? Like, this is the first time that I'm seeing these images, and it should have been probably a while ago, is my guess. But as we all know, probably, is the Western media has completely just ignored Sudan, has refused to go to Sudan. There have been aid organizations, human rights organizations crying for the Western media to come to the Sudan so people can see what's been happening there. But this is just disturbing. Sounded like RW is going to raise a stink over it. Over what? Sorry. I think I missed the context of that.
كل المفترض مرضى غسيل الكلى يغسلوا 3 غسلات في الأسبوع. في كل العالم مفترض الغسيل البروبر يكون 3 غسلات في الأسبوع. للأسف نحن الآن بنغسل غسلة واحدة للأسبوع للمريض. وفي مرضى ما قادرين نوفر لهم الغسلة دي، حتى الغسلة الواحدة ما قادرين نوفرها لهم. إذا استمر الوضع على ما هو عليه قد نعتذر على تقديم هذه الخدمة في ولاية كسلة، لأنه المركز هو مركز وحيد في الولاية.
During the holy month of Ramadan, when the war started, I was in the hospital and had my surgery.
هو الحرب. أنا كنت في المستشفى، كنت عملت العملية دي، طلعوني خدوني في حتة معزولة براي. حصل الضرب، المفروض أرجع مقابلات وزيارات للجرح وهكذا زي دي. طبعا الحرب قامت، كنت أتحرك.
But I had to leave. For fuck's sake. Seems like every corner of the globe right now, wherever we look, something bad is fucking happening. What can we do? Huh, chat? Anybody got any ideas? Open to anything. We're just brainstorming right now. Yeah. Alright. Now let's just go. I think it's just across the border. I think they share a border. Let's go to Kenya to discuss the protests that we have been discussing recently. Let's go to this from Democracy Now! From 8 hours ago. Kenya protests. Police abduct activists as President Ruto rejects the tax bill linked to foreign debt crisis.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world. We begin today's show in Kenya, where police in the capital Nairobi have erected roadblocks and fired tear gas at protesters calling for President William Ruto to resign. Demonstrations are continuing even after Ruto made a dramatic reversal Wednesday and said he would not sign a tax bill that had prompted a nationwide uprising. This came after at least 23 people were killed and dozens more were injured Tuesday when police fired live rounds, rubber bullets and tear gas at protesters who stormed Kenya's parliament. Ruto spoke in a televised address Wednesday.
The country witnessed widespread expression of dissatisfaction with the bill as passed, regrettably resulting in the loss of life, destruction of property, and disintegration of constitutional institutions.
In his address, Ruto called protests against his controversial finance bill treasonous. This is Lorna Diaz, a member of Kenya's Human Rights Commission.
It's not protesters who are treasonous. It's Ruto's acts that are treasonous. There is nothing that justifies the use of live bullets on protesters. But this regime positions snipers to shoot and kill unarmed protesters.
For more, we go to Nairobi, Kenya. We're joined on the phone by a Kenyan writer and activist who's asking to remain anonymous out of fear for her safety as the military patrols the streets. Thanks so much for joining us. I know this is very difficult for you. Can you explain what's happening? We reported yesterday on Kenya more than 22 people dead. Then Ruto changes his mind, says he'll withdraw the tax bill, yet the protests are continuing. Talk about the danger you feel.
I just found this interesting because the assumption I had was that at least initially when I first saw a story about this, like, I don't know, I think it was like Sunday that I first saw a story about this. We didn't even watch it. I just quickly watched. We had so many things I wound up skipping over it one day. I think we never looked at it until whatever it was yesterday. But when I first looked at it, I was thinking to myself that maybe it was just about the tax situation, but the more this develops, the more I'm realizing, no, it's more of a widespread disenchantment with the government and the way they're handling things, because they repealed the tax bill that was causing so much trouble, supposedly, but people are still out there and are pissed off.
What we're seeing today and has been happening for at least the last week is continued abductions of what are considered vocal protesters or organizers. It appears that the government is trying to get to the bottom of who was funding or organizing these protests without realizing that this is a youth-led and people-led movement. And that is part of the reason why a lot of us are online trying to call for the abductions to stop and abductees to be returned. We saw yesterday several high courts order the police to make sure that anyone that is arrested and detained cannot be held incommunicado under Article 49 of the Kenya Constitution. So this is one of the reasons why I'm speaking to you anonymously, just for fear of being abducted myself.
And what is happening so far as you know to the activists who have been detained and imprisoned? Is there a way for you to find out, especially after people have said that according to Article 49 they can't be detained like this?
At this point, many of them not speaking outright about what happened to them. We know that this morning, for instance, an activist who had appeared on TV a few days ago was found in a forest, drugged, and has currently been taken to hospital for treatment. But what we're seeing on the streets right now is also just a heavy police presence. We've seen the deployment of the Kenya Defense Forces, which again has been deemed unconstitutional. The call for the Kenya Defense Forces to be deployed cannot happen without the approval of the National Assembly.
God. So frustrating to see government after government cracking down on people. Peaceful protesters getting drugged and left in the forest, shot in cold blood, arrested without due process, or even without charges. Yeah, it's not a great situation. I feel like we're hearing parallels to this in a bunch of other places too, which is, I mean, to some degree, I'm glad to see people, rising up for their rights and for fair treatment from their governments. But then we see the response from governments, and it's very disheartening. Instead of listening, people get guns and tear gas and whatever else. I just realized that Binder and Rational National are still streaming right now. I just streamed through Leftist Mafia, didn't I? I didn't even think about it because of the debate. It totally threw me off today. Okay, let's see. Actually, let's listen to just a part of this from yesterday. We didn't listen to, but figured we would try and get the rest of this and at least a little piece of it. I'll start around here, I think.
It's our future Kenya, and to just overthrow this silly government, man. We're tired.
And, we spoke to one young man here, a college student, and he says, I'm graduating and there is no way I'm going to have a job. And they say that that is one reason that they will protest as long as they can, because they have no work to go back to. And after a very heated moment with some protesters they just all want to talk to you. They just want someone to listen to why they're angry. Mm-hmm. One kid just walked up to me and said, listen, at the end of the day, all we want is freedom. And then he walked away.
Wow.
And really, that's at the core of what's happening here. They want the freedom to be able to live better, to be able to make choices to affect their lives in a reasonable way. The one thing they keep saying is, no matter what decisions lawmakers make, no matter what decisions corrupt leaders make who aren't fit to be in the jobs that they're in, whatever happens in the halls of power, they will decide the future, even if that means deciding it on the streets, even if that means setting the parliament on fire, which is what we're seeing happening now.
As you're talking, Zane, I'm hearing the sounds in the background that you mentioned, the protesters outside your window. You're at the Al Jazeera Bureau. Describe for me where in Nairobi this is all happening.
We are very close to where all this is happening, but it's not just happening in one place. There are pockets of these demonstrations, hundreds of people in downtown right around Parliament, then hundreds more in another neighborhood, hundreds more in another area. Every access point in and out of the city seems to have young people there. These are young people that just want to be out there and be a part of this. And when they talked about shutting down the country if their demands weren't met, the city is effectively shut down, shops are closed. But the shopkeepers earlier this morning were handing out water, were clearly showing support for these young protesters. We spoke to a mother who was out there in the protest movement with her kids, saying the reason she was there is because she sees no future for her children, and she understands their anger. We've spoken to other parents who were trying to call their kids to see if they were okay, unable to get through. So there's a mix of concern and worry and then active support. But even the older generation, the parents of these young people understand why they're angry and really do support it. They don't.
Okay. That's about sums up what I wanted to get out of that piece. But if this Al Jazeera reporter is correct, it would seem that these young people who are protesting have the support of the older generation in Kenya. This is something of a, multi-generational problem. Okay, now, what else do we have left to talk about here today? It is going to be a slightly shorter stream than usual, because, I already did a stream earlier today. I'm kind of tired. Alright, what else do we have to talk about? Okay, we got a couple of things. First, let's look at this. This is in Myanmar. Actually, wait, no, let's look at this last video from Kenya here. This is out of Reuters from 8 hours ago, where they have footage of the protests, which are still continuing.
Kenya's President William Ruto may have backed down on proposed tax hikes, but that didn't keep some protesters off the streets on Thursday. Kenyan police fired tear gas at dozens of protesters and blocked off streets leading to the presidential palace as demonstrations continued in several cities. Turnout was well down from the height of mass rallies over the past week that were sparked by a contentious finance bill. But some, like Beryl Nalima in Mombasa, have vowed to keep going.
We are only coming here so that our voice can be heard. Us as Gen Zs, us as Kenyans, we are one, so the police should stop killing us.
At least 23 people were killed in clashes on Tuesday, according to the Kenya Medical Association, and 30 were being treated for bullet wounds. In chaotic scenes, Parliament was briefly stormed by protesters and set alight. On Wednesday, Ruto defended his push to raise taxes on items such as bread, cooking oil and diapers, saying it was justified by the need to cut Kenya's high debt burden. But he also acknowledged that the public had overwhelmingly rejected the finance bill and said...
Okay. So yeah, these protests are ongoing as of at least that video from 6 hours ago. Now let's talk about Myanmar. So this is footage. This is footage from a funeral for a monk who was killed by soldiers. And the fact is, there's been a lot of sort of these sorts of just, you know, killings of religious leaders and other things like that have been happening in Myanmar. It's been a very fraught situation. If you're not aware, there's like at least, I think there's dozens. I'm not mistaken. There's dozens of different sort of cells and groups that are sort of like quasi, like guerrilla militaries to some degree that are in, you know, one way or another working with or against each other. It's a very complicated fucking situation, and I just kind of wish that they would stop fighting each other over just what seems to be basically like the dumbest reasons possible, right? Like ethnicity and religion, and it's very frustrating. Granted, it's all kind of popped off when the military decided to coup the government back in, what was it, 2020, 2021? Okay, now we actually only have a couple of videos left here today. This is from Democracy Now! From 8 hours ago, discussing a pretty disturbing trend that I think many of us are aware of. but this goes into great detail on it. This is the title: The Gaza Project. Investigation details unprecedented Israeli targeting of Palestinian journalists.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
Gaza is the deadliest place on earth for journalists, by far. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, over 100 Palestinian journalists have been killed in Gaza since October. The Palestinian Journalist Syndicate puts the figure even higher, at 140 journalists and media workers killed since the start of the war. According to the group, the deaths represent 10% of all journalists in Gaza. Now, a new collaborative investigation called the Gaza Project by the nonprofit group Forbidden Stories brings together 50 journalists from 13 different news organizations to investigate the targeting of journalists in Gaza and the West Bank.
According to the findings of the Gaza Project, at least 40 journalists and media workers in Gaza were killed while at home. At least 14 journalists were wearing press vests at the moment they were killed, injured, or allegedly targeted. At least 18 journalists were killed, injured, or allegedly targeted by...
Like, I feel like in my mind, because of how much of this footage we've seen, that, like, I'm subconsciously aware of a lot of these numbers we're talking about here, but, I mean, 100 journalists killed. 50 journalists from the Gaza Project for 13 news organizations worked together to investigate the killing. It's just like, it's just so...
allegedly targeted. At least 18...
It's just so frustrating to continue to see this happening day in, day out. There's times where I'm like, wait, when's the last time I saw this Al Jazeera correspondent, right? Like, you know, I started, like, because I see these people, like, every day. I'm just thinking to myself, okay, like, did somebody else die? We didn't even see a story on it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just very fucking frustrating. As we know, it's obviously a fucking war crime, and Israel's done nothing to prevent it. But the fact is, as you'll see in this story, they go into the legitimacy of the claim that they are not targeting journalists specifically.
Were killed, injured, or allegedly targeted by drones, and 6 buildings housing media offices were completely or partially destroyed. For more, we're joined by Huda Osman. She is the executive editor for Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism, which was a partner organization in the Gaza Project. Huda Osman is also the president of the Arab and Middle East Journalists Association. She's based in New York, but today is joining us from Amman, Jordan. We thank you so much for being with us. We know that there is a delay in this broadcast. Can you start off by talking about the scope of the project and your major findings, Huda?
Thank you very much for having me here today to speak about this important project. We started the project, we started talking about this months ago. It was a shock to all of us that just like the pure numbers, the scale of the killings of the journalists in Gaza was beyond any imagination. And by any standard, it's unprecedented. World War II, Vietnam, the Iraq War, nothing like this had ever happened to journalists before. It's a crisis not just for Palestinian journalists or Arab journalists, but it should be a crisis for journalists worldwide, the journalists community.
Seriously.
And to be honest, we weren't seeing the outcry, the sort of the reaction that this crisis deserves. So I have to give credit to Forbidden Stories, the nonprofit based in Paris, whose mission is to complete stories.
I think one of the reasons why is because of the fact that there has been a litany of different war crimes which have been completely ignored by the media. And so I think even they realize that like if they had just hyper focused on the media people being killed, it would seem pretty fucking what's the word, hypocritical to not be looking at all of the war crimes and just be talking about the journalists being killed. But the fact is that you know, there's been almost zero recognition of this fact by Western media. I mean, there's been a little bit from time to time just discussing things, but there's been almost zero focus on it.
Or journalists who can't complete them either because they've been killed or censorship or detained. They brought us together to work on this project. As you mentioned, 50 journalists, 13 organizations. And in the beginning, when we started, really all we had was this like huge and tragic number, over 100 journalists killed. And we started from there. We wanted to investigate these killings. We started off by actually dividing the cases amongst us to look into every case and look into which investigations could come out of this project. And I can speak about some of the main findings, which included, I feel like maybe one of the main results is just like collectively, by having worked on this for so many months and all of us together, to sort of push back against the claim, the Israeli claim, that journalists have not been targeted, and to show through the different investigations that we've produced. I think over 20 articles and reports have been published by the different organizations, that there is a systematic attacks on journalists in Gaza and the West Bank too. We actually have 2 stories out of the West Bank, including a story about a specific attack on a TV crew in the West Bank. So collectively, just
yeah, and I think this is what we've all been thinking, right? Is that this isn't accidental, as the IDF has been claiming. The attacks on journalists have been completely intentional. I mean, look at the way they have been dealing with journalists. They're not allowing any journalists into Gaza. They have been letting anybody who might even just be able to see what's happening in there. The only journalists, quote unquote, that have been, you know, that we've been seeing are just Gazan civilians in many cases that are having to become journalists. Not that there aren't journalists in Gaza, that's not what I'm trying to say, but a lot of, because of how many journalists have died, it's become a thing. We've seen multiple instances of literal children becoming journalists. Because there's no Western media allowed in there, because Israel doesn't want the actual effects of what they're doing to be seen by the world. And it's just it's going to be real interesting to see people try and play off this report and trying to ignore it. They'll probably just be ignored. I'm sure they won't even play it off. They'll just pretend it doesn't exist. But at least we know.
Looking at all the investigations together, you can clearly see that this is not just random, or the notion that because of the scale of the destruction and the war in Gaza, that this is just a natural result. And when you look at these investigations, you'll come to this conclusion. But also, I'm happy to speak about some of the specific findings and some of the specific stories that we've worked on, if you'd like me to.
Yes, Huda, we would like you to speak about some of the specific stories. Maybe you could begin with the directed attacks against the AFP office, which you wrote about at length, and also explain how all of these different, because you have some of the leading media organizations in the world who were involved in this, from Le Monde to Der Spiegel, etc. How did you all coordinate your work together, and then speak about what happened at the AFP office?
So let me start by how we all work together. Forbidden Stories was critical in managing this project. You can imagine 50 journalists in several different countries. So coordinating this project is definitely a challenge. But we all worked on all the stories. So once we've determined, after the initial stage of doing some research about the different cases, once we've identified certain leads that we were going to follow, we created these subgroups, and anybody who's interested in one of these leads would join this group. And then we did what we refer to as radical sharing. Everybody was just radically sharing whatever they were doing. I was doing interviews, somebody else was doing like forensic visual analysis, someone else had access to documents, and everybody shared everything. And that's how, it's the power really of this investigation. I wouldn't have been able to do it alone. Arij, my organization, wouldn't have been able to do it alone, and none of the other organizations would have been able to do it by themselves as well. Let me speak about like one of our major findings. On November 2nd, the AFP offices in Gaza, there was an explosion there. And the result was a huge gaping hole that you can see from the outside, but also on the inside, a lot of damage. AFP regularly, as a common practice for foreign offices in Gaza, send their map coordinates, their location, to the Israeli military to tell them that this is a media office and it's not to be targeted. So when asked about what had happened, initially the Israeli army said that they didn't recognize that anything had happened. Then they said maybe there were clashes, and this was like as a result of the debris. And there were condemnations and requests for investigations, but then nothing really happened. And then we started looking into this. What we had really to work on this was the live footage from the camera that was stationed in the AFP offices. When the staff left in October after the Israeli evacuation orders, they left an unmanned camera that was connected to solar power. And these explosions were caught on camera on the live feed. And we were able to identify 4 strikes. And through analysis that was done by both Le Monde and Paper Trail Media, an organization in Germany that was part of this collaboration, and which was confirmed by an audio analysis done by an organization specializing in audio investigations, and by 6 weapons experts, we were able to determine that this was actually direct firing by an Israeli tank from around 3 kilometers away.
And this is just one of their findings among a litany of them. They did a massive amount of work for this. Just the way she's describing it, you can clearly see. I mean, they're going through an incredible amount of data and probably video footage and other sorts of. I mean, having to. Democracy dies in dark. What just happened? Why? Did they just get copyright struck? What just happened? Why did everything just go black? Is it back? Looks like it's back. What the actual fuck just happened? Support character. You want another support character? Yeah, okay. Well, unfortunately, we only have one video left. I will give you another support character if I can get it to switch screens fast enough. 10. That was weird. Okay. Now, there's another part in this video that I wanted us to watch. I'm trying to remember where it is. I think it's right around here, actually. Okay, let's hope that Democracy Now! Isn't copyright striking me. I'm going to try to continue watching this video.
And it's just like rubble.
Hoda Osman, we only have a minute to go, but I wanted to ask you about this other crucial story that appeared in The Guardian that was headlined The Gray Zone, how IDF views some journalists in Gaza as legitimate targets. If you can explain very briefly.
So the news organization that lost, the media organization that lost the most journalists was Al-Aqsa, which is considered to be affiliated with Hamas. And Harry Davis, who's the reporter on the story, looked into this and spoke to a spokesperson from the Israeli military who said, yes, we consider people who work for this media organization as terrorists and legitimate targets. But then after the publication of the story, the Israeli military kind of retracted and said that the spokesperson does not represent our views, and that's not our view.
Yeah, but when you have the main spokesperson saying that, it really seems like somebody just unintentionally sticking their foot in their mouth, right? He just saying the quiet part out loud here, right? It's somebody admitting to something that's clearly a war crime that Israel shouldn't be doing, but are in fact doing. That is a very, very frustrating. It wasn't like a copyright strike, you don't think? It was weird. I saw I have like a couple of windows that are monitoring so I can see it at all times if something goes wrong on people's feeds. Yeah, it was weird. I don't think I've ever seen it quite do that. But the fact that that he had admitted to it is just, it's just incredible that happened. I don't think I remember hearing that when it happened. Ugh. All right, one last story here tonight. My audio stuttered. Weird. Very weird. Very weird. Not sure what that is about. Could be all the space junk. Alright, last story. It's fine. It happened at the end of the stream. It's not a big deal. And it seems to be working fine now, too. So, I think we're okay. This is from 19 hours ago, discussing the displaced families. The just unbelievable number of displaced families in Gaza that are currently facing growing health risks from exposure. Exposure to all sorts of stuff. Just being left outdoors in tents, being exposed to sewage and garbage, and all sorts of other things. Wait, did my stream get cut off? Is it still going? What's happening?
يا ريت على قد الريحه والله جمطها صرنا تعودنا احنا على المزابل
Hold on,
لكن
sorry.
المصيبه مش في الزبل النمل والصراصير
Jesus Christ. Look at this fucking... Ugh.
يا ريت على قد الريحه والله جمطها
I wish the problem was only the
صرنا
smell.
تعودنا
They're
احنا على
accustomed to the
المزابل
garbage. The problem is not the garbage,
لكن
the ants,
المصيبه
the
مش في الزبل
cockroaches,
النمل
the
والصراصير
flies that come
والدباب
out from
بيطلع
under the
من تحت
ground. How
الارض
they
كيف
come out, I
بيطلع
don't
الله
know.
من عارف
Rats walk between their
العرس
legs.
بتبقى تجي تحت رجليك طب وين نروح؟
Where can we go?
وين نروح؟ تعال شوف
Look,
طلع هذا
here's the
الخيمه
tent.
هيا مين لا حدا
No one
بعطينا
gave
خيمه
us a
ولا حدا
tent, and
بدور
no
على
one is
المخيم
caring about
باكل
our
ولا حدا
camps
بدور
in
بشرب
terms of food or
وفوق هذا
drink.
كمان
And
زباله
beside all of this,
والقمامه
there is also garbage. Oh, God.
احنا صار لنا 8-9
8 to
شهور
9 months passed
واحنا
and we are
قاعدين
dying
بنموت كل
1,000
يوم
times
1000
a day.
موته اولادنا راحت وماتت
Our children are dead, our families are dead, our homes are gone. This is just horrifying. It's like these people are being forced to live inside of just a hell on earth. So frustrating.
ماتت ودورنا راحت ورغم ذلك انه اللي بنعيشه انا
Despite
اصعب
that, what we
اللي
live here is more
بنعيشه
difficult.
بدير
What we live
البلح
here in
وفي
Deir
النزوح
al-Balah
تاعنا
and
اصعب
displacement
واحنا
is
بنتمنى
more
يروحونا على الشمال
difficult.
ونموت
We
في
hope
دورنا
that we
وعلى
will
اراضينا
return
ولا
to the north
نظلنا
and
هنا
die in our homes. That's sad. To wish to die just in your home. Good God. It's the lowest bar ever set. All right. Well, we've made it through another one, chat. It's a pleasure having you all here tonight. Thankfully, we all had each other to get through that mess. But that's it for me. So I'll see you next time. You stay classy, Galactic Stream Nation. Can't forget this. These are your galactic patrons. Gabby, Goth Dogs, Aaron W, Mitty, PB, Robot Cat, Morbius Dragon, The Anti-Corporatist, Monoip, Nadia, Mrs. Jen, Pitchforks Dragon, Omega Star, Vincent Morales, and Donald James X. That's right. All these people here help make sure the stream continues to stay alive. You can do the same. Click that link in chat. For a few dollars a month, you too can not only help produce this stream, and also gain access to super sweet galactic space benefits, unseen by the rest of the Milky Way.